Before we begin this story, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Epic Story Spot, and hit the notification bell so you never miss one of our daily life-changing stories. Emily Carter had always dreamed of being the kind of teacher her students would never forget. The kind who sparked a love of words and ideas. The kind who made learning feel like discovery instead of duty. At 32, she taught English at Willowbrook High, a small-town school where the lockers were dented and the paint on the gym floor was peeling, but the students still came alive when a story reached them. She loved her job, but she was tired. The late nights, grading essays, the endless meetings, and the way some parents treated her as though she was little more than a babysitter wore her down. Her colleagues had begun to whisper that maybe Emily was too passionate, too invested. "Don't take it all home with you," they would say, but she couldn't help it. On a gray Friday afternoon, as the last bell rang and students rushed out into the spring air, Emily lingered in her classroom. She stacked forgotten textbooks, straightened desks, and gathered a pile of battered novels to return to the library. One of the older volumes, a thick literature anthology with its cover half torn, slipped from the pile and thudded to the floor. When she bent to pick it up, something fluttered loose. A yellowed envelope slid across the floorboards, wedging itself against the leg of a desk. Emily frowned, brushing dust from her knees as she reached for it. The envelope was brittle with age, sealed with a faded red wax stamp she didn't recognize. Across the front, in neat, slanted handwriting, were the words, "To whoever finds this, read carefully." Her heart gave a small, involuntary jump. She sat at her desk, the late afternoon sunlight falling across her papers. With careful fingers, she opened the flap. Inside was a folded letter, the ink faded to brown, but still legible. She smoothed it flat and began to read. "My dearest," it began, "if you are reading this, then my words have outlasted me. I had to make a choice, one that changed everything. I do not know if history will remember me kindly, but I pray that someone, someday, will understand." Emily read the letter twice, then a third time, her pulse quickening with each line. It spoke of a love that had been forbidden, of secrets kept inside these very walls, of something hidden that was never meant to be discovered. The writer hinted at a truth buried in the town's history, something that could alter the way people saw everything. Emily's hands trembled as she placed the letter on her desk. She couldn't explain why, but she felt as though it had been meant for her. The words seemed to reach across time, pulling her into a story that had begun long before she was born. The floor creaked in the hallway. She looked up quickly, half expecting one of her students to appear, but the doorway was empty. She slipped the letter back into the envelope and tucked it into her bag. For the rest of the evening, she couldn't concentrate. The words from the letter repeated in her head, haunting her as she graded essays and straightened her bookshelf at home. By the time the clock struck midnight, she knew she couldn't ignore it. The next morning, she carried the letter to the library. Mrs. Thompson, the librarian, looked at it through her thick glasses and frowned. "This handwriting," she murmured, "I've seen something like it before, years ago in the archives. You may have stumbled on as something remarkable, Emily." Emily swallowed hard. "What kind of something?" Mrs. Thompson looked up, her eyes serious. "The kind that changes lives." Emily sat across from Mrs. Thompson in the quiet library, the old envelope lying between them like a fragile artifact. The librarian's eyes moved slowly over the faded words, her lips pressing into a thin line. "This handwriting," Mrs. Thompson murmured, adjusting her glasses, "it reminds me of something I saw years ago. When we cataloged the Old Town archives, there were letters, journals, records of families who lived here long before the school was built. This feels connected." Emily leaned closer, her pulse racing. "Do you think it's real? Not just some student's prank?" The librarian gave her a sharp look. "The paper alone tells me this is no prank. It's older than both of us combined." Emily bit her lip. She wanted to ask more, but footsteps echoed behind them. She turned and saw Daniel Miller, the history teacher from down the hall. He carried a stack of papers under one arm, his shirt rumpled as always. He paused when he saw the two women, his brow furrowing. "What's this?" Daniel asked, setting down his stack. Mrs. Thompson looked at Emily as if giving her permission. Emily hesitated, then pushed the envelope across the table. Daniel unfolded the letter carefully, his eyes scanning the faded ink. His face changed as he read. First curiosity, then surprise, and finally something like awe. "This," he said softly, "is talking about the Whitfield family. I've taught about them in class. They were one of the founding families of Willowbrook. But the way this is written, it sounds like someone from inside the family, hiding something." Emily's breath caught. The Whitfields? But that means that this letter could be a primary source, Daniel finished for her. History hidden in plain sight. They agreed to meet again the next day to search the archives. Emily could hardly sleep that night. She kept the letter beside her bed, reading and rereading it under the glow of her lamp until the words blurred. The writer spoke of a choice, of sacrifice, of love lost and secrets locked away. It was intimate and aching, and it felt as if it had been written to her alone. The following afternoon, Emily and Daniel descended into the library basement where the town's oldest records were stored. Dust hung in the air like smoke, and the smell of old paper was thick and heavy. Mrs. Thompson unlocked a metal cabinet and wheeled out boxes filled with brittle documents. They pored over birth certificates, land deeds, handwritten journals. Daniel's voice grew more animated with every discovery. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a faded map of the town. "The Whitfield estate used to cover nearly half of Willowbrook. But see this? A building marked here, behind where the high school stands now. It's gone from every modern map, almost like someone erased it." Emily felt a chill. "What kind of building?" Daniel flipped through more papers. "Records call it guest house, but there are no photographs, no mentions of who lived there. Just silence." Emily reached for another box and pulled free a leather-bound journal. Inside were entries written in the same looping script as the letter. Her heart skipped. She turned the pages, skimming lines about family gatherings, town meetings, and then an abrupt stop. The last page was torn out, ripped clean. She looked at Daniel, her hands trembling. "It's the same handwriting." Daniel's eyes widened. Then whoever wrote the letter also kept this journal. They stayed until the lights flickered and Mrs. Thompson insisted it was time to close. Emily carried the journal home, unable to shake the feeling that she was on the edge of something immense. That night, rain battered against her window as she sat at her desk with the journal and letter spread before her. She copied down the words carefully, piecing together what fragments she could. The letter mentioned a secret hidden within the walls where learning thrives. At first she thought it was poetic, but then she realized the school itself was built on the old Whitfield land. She sat back, her pulse racing. Could something still be hidden inside the school? The next morning, she shared her thoughts with Daniel. His eyes lit up. "If that's true, we need to search. There might be more records, or even physical evidence left behind." Emily hesitated. "But what if we're wrong? What if it's just coincidence?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Then we'll know. But if we're right." He didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. That evening, long after the students had gone home, Emily and Daniel returned to the school with flashlights. They walked the empty halls, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the lockers. The letter crinkled in Emily's pocket like a heartbeat. They checked classrooms, storage closets, even the basement boiler room. Hours passed with nothing but dust and disappointment. Emily was ready to give up when Daniel stopped abruptly in the old wing of the school. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. Emily held her breath. A faint humming sound echoed through the hallway. She followed him to the end, where a row of lockers stood against the wall. Daniel pressed his ear against one. "It's hollow." Together they pushed, and with a groan, one of the lockers shifted. Behind it was a narrow door, its wood dark with age. Carved into the center was a faint symbol, a rose. Emily's hand shook as she traced the carving. The same rose from the letter's wax seal. She turned to Daniel, her voice barely above a whisper. This is it. If you're hooked right now and want to see where this incredible mystery leads, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves inspiring stories. We post new ones every day, and you won't want to miss the conclusion of this one. They pried the door open, the wood splintering around the hinges. A rush of cool, stale air poured out. Inside was a narrow stairwell spiraling down into darkness. Emily shined her flashlight and swallowed hard. We shouldn't be here, she whispered, though her feet were already moving forward. The stairwell led to a hidden chamber beneath the school. Shelves lined the walls, filled with boxes, notebooks, and files stacked high. Dust coated everything, but the air felt electric, as if the room itself had been waiting for them. Daniel lifted a box and brushed off the label. Whitfield Family Records. Emily opened another and froze. Inside were dozens of letters, all in the same handwriting as the one she had found. She pulled one free and read aloud. To my child, should you ever seek the truth? Her voice broke. These weren't just letters. They were confessions, written to be discovered. Suddenly, footsteps echoed above them. Heavy, deliberate. Emily and Daniel froze. The sound grew louder, closer, as if someone else knew about the hidden chamber. The beam of a flashlight cut across the stairwell. A man's voice echoed in the darkness. I told you some stories were better left buried. The man's flashlight beam cut across the stairwell, blinding Emily and Daniel as they crouched in the hidden chamber. His voice was calm, but carried an edge that froze Emily's blood. I told you some stories were better left buried. Daniel instinctively stepped in front of Emily, his body tense. Who are you? And why are you down here? The man's shoes clicked on the steps as he descended. He wore a dark coat, his features sharp in the shifting beam. His eyes landed on the letter Emily held. That doesn't belong to you. Emily clutched the paper tighter. It was hidden here, forgotten. Why shouldn't it belong to me, or to the truth? The man's mouth twisted. Because the Whitfield family built this town. Their wealth, their legacy, their name, everything rests on people not knowing what those letters contain. If you reveal what's written there, you don't just tarnish a family. You burn down an entire history. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears. And you? Who are you protecting? I represent people who understand the cost of truth, the man said coldly. Hand me the letters. Walk away, or this will not end well for you. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Dust drifted in the flashlight's beam. Emily thought of her students, of all the times she had told them that stories mattered, that truth mattered. She thought of her mother's voice telling her, never be afraid to ask questions. Her hand shook, but she raised her chin. No, these letters were hidden so that one day they would be found. And I think that day is today. The man's face hardened. He stepped closer, but Daniel shoved a shelf against him. Boxes tumbled, scattering old papers across the stone floor. Run, Daniel shouted. Emily sprinted up the stairwell, her flashlight beam bouncing wildly. She burst into the school hallway, Daniel close behind. The man cursed below, struggling to climb past the fallen shelf. Emily and Daniel shoved the locker back into place, jamming the hidden door shut just as heavy fists pounded from the other side. They leaned against the lockers, gasping. Emily's hands trembled as she clutched the letter. He's going to come after us, she whispered. Daniel nodded grimly. Then we need to move fast. We have to prove what's in these letters before he destroys them. The next days blurred into frantic searching. Emily and Daniel pored over the recovered boxes in secret, piecing together fragments of history. The letters revealed a scandal buried deep. Members of the Whitfield family had secretly funded abolitionist efforts, hiding families in safe houses, even as others in the family publicly supported institutions of power. It was a family torn in two, between protecting their image and protecting lives. And in the middle of it all, one name appeared again and again, Eleanor Whitfield. Emily froze the first time she read aloud. Eleanor. My grandmother's name was Eleanor. She died before I was born. Daniel leaned closer. Emily, do you think? I don't know, Emily whispered. Her heart raced as she read the lines. Eleanor had written of love forbidden by her own family, of choices made in secret, of a child hidden to protect her from shame. Her hand shook as she traced the ink. Could it be? Was she connected to all of this not just by chance, but by blood? The man in the coat did not disappear. Twice Emily saw a figure outside her apartment at night, a shadow moving away when she turned on the light. Daniel urged her to go to the police, but what proof did they have? They'll call us conspiracy theorists, he said bitterly. One evening, Mrs. Thompson summoned them back to the library basement. She held out a file she had unearthed. This was buried deep in the archives, she said, her voice trembling. Inside was a birth certificate, a name smudged but clear enough. Eleanor Whitfield. Mother. Eleanor. Father. Unknown. Emily's knees went weak. Tears blurred her vision. Her grandmother. Her family. The truth had been here all along, waiting, but the file was dated only weeks before the journal entry stopped. What happened to her? Emily whispered. No one answered. The next night, the man confronted Emily directly. She was walking home when he stepped from the shadows. His voice was low, urgent. You think this is about history? It's not. It's about power. If you expose this, you don't just rewrite the past. You threaten people who still hold sway in this town. People who will not forgive. Emily's voice shook, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. The truth matters more than their forgiveness. He studied her for a long moment, then slipped a folded paper into her hand. Then you should know all of it, before you decide. And he walked away into the night. Emily opened the paper under her kitchen light. It was another letter, not from Eleanor, but addressed to her. From someone who claimed to be her grandfather. It spoke of regret, of a life lived in shadows, of a wish that one day his family would be free to know the truth. Her tears fell onto the page. She realized then that this wasn't just history. This was her story. With Daniel and Mrs. Thompson's help, Emily brought the evidence to a regional news outlet. At first, the editors were skeptical, but when they saw the sheer volume of documents, the matching handwriting, the certificates, they knew it was real. A story that could shake the town to its foundations. The article went live. Local teacher uncovers hidden letters linking founding family to underground efforts. The town erupted. Some praised Emily as a hero. Others condemned her as a troublemaker tarnishing the Whitfield name. Strangers stopped her in the street to thank her, to cry, to tell her that their ancestors might have passed through the very safe houses Eleanor once described. And then the call came. A documentary producer. We want to tell this story, the woman said. Not just for the town, but for everyone. People need to see that history is never as simple as we're taught. Months later, Emily stood in front of cameras in the school's library. Behind her, the hidden chamber had been carefully restored and preserved. She told the story in her own words, her voice steady even as tears pricked her eyes. She spoke of Eleanor Whitfield, of the sacrifice she had made, of the family secrets that had finally come to light. And she spoke of her students. I tell them stories matter, she said softly. And now I see why. Because sometimes the stories we hide are the ones that can change us most. When the documentary aired, Emily's world changed. Letters poured in from across the country. Other teachers wrote to say they were using her discovery in their classrooms. Descendants of the families Eleanor had sheltered reached out with gratitude. And Emily herself felt something she hadn't in years. Purpose. One evening, after filming wrapped, Daniel found her standing alone in the hidden chamber, staring at the carved rose on the wooden door. You did it, he said quietly. Emily smiled through tears. No, we did it. And so did Eleanor. She wanted her story told. And now it is. She pressed her hand against the rose carving, feeling the rough wood beneath her palm. For the first time, the weight of her life felt lighter. She was no longer just a tired teacher in a small town. She was part of something bigger, a chain of truth stretching back through generations. And as she turned toward the camera one last time, she spoke directly, her voice clear and steady. If you believe stories don't matter, remember this one. Because one letter changed my life, and maybe it can change yours too. Thank you for watching this story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Epic Story Spot, and share it with someone who loves inspiring stories. We post new stories every single day, and we can't wait to see you again tomorrow.